Following a comet hitting Earth 40 years ago and only 1% of the population surviving, this new series on Netflix is focused on the world in which that followed, where oxygen became a scarce resource and a commodity, and the world was completely unrecognizable to how it was before. With the infamous 5-8 delivery man being at the wheel and leading Sa-Wol and a group of former refugees, this show, whilst being a sci-fi piece, it had a powerful message to share on class systems and the disregarding of a certain type of people. So with that, let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this show. So let's get into it. Here is Black Knight Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The ending. As we embarked onto the ending of the final episode, we saw that Mr. Ryu Seok's intentions were found out by 5-8 General Seol-ah and Sa-Wol, who was now 5'7" after winning the delivery man competition. Even Ryu's own father was aware of the fact that he'd been using Cheonmyeong as a way of polluting the air, which in the long run was causing the Earth to never be able to recover from what occurred all of those years ago when the comet hit. This was allowing himself to get richer and the people at the bottom of the triangle, the refugees, to suffer even more. This was what he wanted. Ryu Seok viewed the refugees as vermin and was going about removing them from civilization in his own way, whether that be with large-scale attacks on them or with the so-called vaccination that they needed before they got moved into the general district. These were all ways of luring them into one place, providing them hope, but actually doing something completely different. He was an evil individual and he needed to be stopped. He viewed himself as god of this newfound world. That's where 5-8, Sa-Wol, and the rest of the crew came into it. Sa-Wol was captured as he witnessed Useless get killed, a death that was extremely personal to him because he was almost like a brother to him. He was one of his best friends, and it was the second time that he experienced personal loss in the show, as during the beginning Seol-ah was killed right in front of him. Sa-Wol ended up being captured, but as Ryu Seok took him to the core district, we saw that it came under attack from 5-8 and the rest of the former refugee delivery drivers. Ryu Seok's game was up, and there was nothing that he could do about it. Everybody knew about the fact that he'd been polluting the area in order to make money, and that he'd carried out widespread attacks in order to take out the refugees. So the last thing that he wanted to do was own the fact that he was going to end it. However, he didn't even get to do that, as 5-8 took that away from him. Once the core district was destroyed and everybody escaped, a short while later District A had finished being built, and we saw that the migration process started. This was something that finally gave refugees a chance, and it removed the class system that divided them so strongly in the former world. They were to have the same rights as the people who were formerly at the top, and it was going to be a world where oxygen wasn't a commodity, but it was a basic thing that everybody was entitled to, allowing it to be circulated around the world like it formerly was in the core district. We saw that this was present due to Sa-Wol having his head outside of the window and being able to breathe with no issues whatsoever. The masks were gone, and the world started returning to the way that it used to be prior to the comet hitting. The air was purer and the sky was clearer. Cheonmyeong was no longer polluting the planet, and the world was able to thrive again. There was a moment in the climax of the episode where Ryu Seok asked 5-8 if the boy was important to him, to which he said that he was. It was a moment that I thought was quite nice. We'd seen 5-8 acting quite short, blunt, and harsh throughout the entirety of the series, as that was how his personality was painted to us. But in this moment, he showed that he did actually care for Sa-Wol, and that he wanted to look out for him, like how he looked out for all of those refugees all of those years ago when the riots were happening. I feel he viewed Sa-Wol as more than just a colleague and a friend, but somebody who he wanted under his wing, and also somebody that he cared about deeply. Maybe he saw himself in him. Let's now address a few other questions that were left after the ending. Why was Ryu Seok taking people? Within the show, it was made clear that Ryu Seok was taking individuals, but more specifically young people that were around the same age as Sa-Wol, and individuals that were known as Children of the Miners. Children of the Miners were said to be mutants and had bones that were made of metal. We saw that this proved to be a huge advantage when compared to regular humans. Sa-Wol was a mutant and he was basically indestructible at points. We found out early on in the show that Ryu Seok was dying due to an illness that he had, and we saw that he was essentially taking Children of the Miners in order to get their blood, run experiments on them, and hopefully come up with a cure. This was so that he'd be able to live on. However, it kept failing. With Sa-Wol's blood being taken following him winning the delivery man competition, it was said that he was the strongest and healthiest mutant that they'd ever seen. Hence why we saw that he was connected to Ryu Seok in the final episode. Ryu Seok wanted what made Sa-Wol so strong inside of him, and it did sound as though it was working. Something that was ever so briefly mentioned and moved on from, so I do wonder if that will be made more important in the next season of the show. If there are people that are dying in civilization, could the blood of a mutant be the cure? It could well be, and maybe that will eventually get explored. Overall review. I really enjoyed this show. I didn't know what to expect before going into it, but it's safe to say that it turned out to be a really enjoyable experience. There were so many things that were good about the show. I thought the performances from all of the cast were extremely strong. Sa-Wol and 5-8 were most definitely the strongest in the show, and that was good because they were carrying it for the long part. I thought the visual effects and the environment that was created was extremely believable. For a world that has been ruined due to natural disaster, it's something that has to be convincing, and I feel like all of the districts that were in the show felt like different places. It felt like it was a world where the oxygen was scarce and you had to have a mask on outside, and I commend it for that. With the runtime being around 40 minutes an episode and there only being 6 of them, it was the perfect amount for this show. I feel it allowed the show to be extremely digestible. I do find sometimes that having a 10-episode series that can each be around 1 hour in length can entice fatigue at points. I also feel that it opens it up to have an episode or two that can end up being a bit puffy and just filler. Whereas with this, it wasn't that at all. Every episode mattered and every moment in all of the episodes did too. It reminded me of Mad Max, and I thought that was cool. There's not been many shows like this, and I've not seen a K-drama that's done it either, so it made a change to a lot of the shows that have been coming out recently. I'm definitely glad that I gave it a watch. I feel there has to be a second season to the show as well. There were so many things that weren't completely answered when it came to the ending. For example, Sa-Wol knew that he was a mutant, but he didn't know what it meant, nor did we. We know that he's the strongest and healthiest mutant that could potentially be out there, but I wonder how important that is to the overarching story. With the civilization being moved to District A and Ryu Seok being out of the picture, I feel that could open the door to a new person thinking they can become top dog and maybe be the new enemy of the next season. I guess we'll just have to see. So, there you have it. Black Knight Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @BrainPilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this show? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.